What's up, guys? It's your girl Asia Lynn here, and today I'm disgusted. For those of you who don't know, there was a documentary that recently just came out called Quiet on Set. This documentary kind of details the abuse that Nickelodeon stars and staff had to endure during their time there from the hands of people like Dan Snyder and friends. I literally cannot look at my childhood the same. If you are from the 90s to the early 2000s, you have been affected by this documentary. All of our TV shows that we grew up watching that we loved is literally in this documentary. Growing up, you were either three things. You were either a Disney Channel kid, you were a Nickelodeon kid, or you were a Cartoon Network kid. Or sometimes you can be all three because, we like to switch the channel anytime there was a commercial. I did not realize until this documentary how much Dan Snyder is my childhood. Let me tell you, Dan Snyder has single-handedly either produced or written on the shows of All That, Kenan and Kel, The Amanda Show, What I Like About You, Drake and Josh, iCarly, Sam and Cat, Victorious, and he even grabbed the attention of the older generation with things like Henry Danger and the Game Shakers. This is a pretty big deal. In part one of the whole video, it basically details the history of Dan Snyder and how he kind of rose to be the golden boy of Nickelodeon, and also how Amanda Bynes is a big contributor to that. If you're like me, Amanda Bynes has been in my childhood from when I was probably 4 years old to 16. I mean, she's been in things like All That when she did Ask Ashley, and she would act like that little girl who gets upset anytime she reads letters. She was on The Amanda Show, her own show, where she gave us skits like The Girls Room, that Blockbuster skit that I used to love as well too. She had What I Like About You, which I really loved. She was also on Big Fat Liar, which was a really good movie. And then just little things like She's the Man. I love that movie. What a Girl Wants, I think, where she has a dad in London or something like that. So Amanda is a pretty big part of all of our childhood. And they basically talked about how Dan literally scooped her up when she was really young, gave her own TV show, really close with her. There's weird clips of him in a hot tub with her, him fully clothed, but her in a bathing suit, which is totally inappropriate. Him not only just being, allegedly, we can kind of assume that there was something inappropriate going with him and Amanda. I mean, look at her now. She's not okay. She even had a Twitter account back in the day where she talks about how she got where you don't have a child anymore. I don't know if you can say it on YouTube. She got where you don't have a child anymore at age 13 because of her boss, at the hands of her boss. Who else is her boss at age 13? But the thing is, the documentary doesn't really go into if he touched Amanda Bynes. It more goes into his treatment of staff. He would literally have dares for his staff where it's like, if you eat this whole carton of ice cream, I'll give you $300. He would literally have only 2 women writers and they would have to share the same salary. And the reason why it taints my childhood is because if you look back, and there's been so many clips on TikTok of this now, and that's probably why they want to ban TikTok. If you look back on the characters, the scenes, the shows that he's produced, they are weird. One good example they talk about in the documentary is one of my favorite characters on the Amanda Show called Penelope Taint. Penelope Taint was a girl who was obsessed with Amanda. She'd be like, "Where's Amanda? I need to find Amanda, please." I was just obsessed with her because she's just so freaking weird.
No, she's in this skit. Yes, she is, but you're not. So please leave. You're interrupting television. I must meet Amanda. Security!
They literally said on the documentary, the reason why she's called Penelope Taint is because Dan Snyder thought it would be funny if he had a young character play this name that is literally the area of a guy's, between the guys. Why are we having characters' names who are male parts? And as a kid, I didn't even notice. And Dan Snyder actually responded very quickly to this documentary. Literally after the last episode of the documentary, he posted an interview, which was complete and utter bullshit. In the interview, he talked about how, it's not just me. You understand, I have bosses and it's the network itself. And so if these things are really inappropriate, then the network would have said something. I don't have that control. He also basically said that he wrote kid jokes. The kid jokes were given to a live kid audience and the parents were there. So if there was truly a problem, then somebody would said something. But it's just us because we're looking at it through adult lenses instead of kids like he originally planned it to be. But here's my thing with that. Number one, as a kid, I find anything funny. Anything physical, I find funny. So in the documentary, for an example, it shows about how, he had like this African American boy be like a nose superhero. And he had noses that clearly looked like genitalia on his shoulder. He sneezed and there was like snot just leaking off of this girl's face. Clearly, as a kid, I think that's funny because, oh my gosh, like something's on her face, haha. Now, as an adult, that's a shot. He literally played with our innocence as kids. In regards to, nobody said anything, who's gonna say something to the heavy hitter money maker of the show? If you're making literally millions of dollars for Nickelodeon, then you have them in your pocket and they're not going to say anything, because every single show, sad to say it, that Dan Snyder has touched is really, really successful. Nickelodeon was not doing well at one point because Disney Channel during this time had That's So Raven. It had Wizards of Waverly Place, Hannah Montana, Sweet Life of Zack and Cody, Lizzie McGuire. They were actually having competition at this time. And so in order to be the number one network, of course you're gonna keep the golden goose that makes you in the running still with Disney Channel. Of course they didn't say anything, Dan. Of course. That whole interview, you should take your time to kind of watch it because it didn't make any sense from the start. As soon as I saw who was interviewing him, which is a character on iCarly who was like, this is literally, Dan was your employer at one point. What kind of biased interview is that? You know what I'm saying? And then the whole time in the interview, instead of asking questions objectively, it just seemed like he was like, oh, Dan, I don't believe this, but what do you think about other people saying this? Or, Dan, I know that you're diverse, but what do you think about the other people who think and may not know you? It's just like, seriously, dude, we didn't need this interview. Dan, you might as well have not said anything to us than produce that bullshit on your channel. You understand what I'm saying? If you want to answer questions and if you really do feel sorry for the actions, why not get a real journalist, a real interviewer? You know, somebody who is neutral to the party and is going to ask you those big questions rather than just try to appease you and clear your name. As we go deeper into the documentary, part 3 is what really broke me, because that's when we found out that now there was sexual abuse going on, and it was not just Dan Snyder, allegedly, because we don't know if Dan Snyder actually did those things. Predators surrounding all of the Nickelodeon stores. Literally, they were surrounded by predators. They had a person named Jason who, when the cops finally arrest him, found 9-year-old girl underwears in his house. What? And on top of that, there was a parent who was recalling a story about how he literally sends a picture of himself saying, thinking about you, to her like 11, 12-year-old daughter. And this is Nickelodeon people. Like, this is Nickelodeon children who are actors on set, and these grown adults who they trust is sending them this. So that's disgusting. Then enters Brian Peck, who literally, I have no words for him. He sexually assaulted Drake Bell, and we were all surprised about that because we have never heard about this until the documentary came out, because he was underage. So I think that they couldn't legally like release his name. That really killed me because I was just like, wow, like this is not just an extra, this is not just like, you know, a guest star. This was one of the kids that we grew up watching. This was Drake Bell, and he got touched. He turned Drake Bell against his own father. He isolated Drake Bell. He made sure that he became his father instead of his own father. His father, Drake Bell's father, actually was catching on to Brian because he was so manipulative, and the mother ended up getting control over Drake Bell and the money. Drake's dad was like, all I asked you to do, wife, ex-wife, whatever, is just to not make him next to Brian Peck because there's something weird going on. And what did she do? The exact opposite. It broke me to see Drake retelling his story because him and his grown age couldn't even get the words what exactly happened during that time. And he doesn't deserve, he's not owed that. To see him not even go into detail because the things were traumatic to him is crazy. This happened at age 15. And he said, literally, think of the worst thing that you can do sexually assaulted wise. And that's what happened to him. And in the documents, it literally had words like foreign objects and oral, and you just think about what could be the worst thing. And that is literally what happened to Drake Bell. The sad part about it is that Drake Bell, he didn't know if he can tell anybody, number one, and it wasn't even his mother that noticed it at the end. He literally was at his girlfriend's house, and it was his girlfriend's mother that was like, wait, Brian is acting weird. This is unusual behavior, because Brian wanted to take him to Disneyland and Drake was like, no. And he kept on calling and calling and calling. And it literally took somebody else's mother to realize that this is not good behavior. And even then it didn't stop, because Drake didn't feel comfortable enough to share his story. And it was only when Brian really wanted to solidify in his life by requesting to play the dad in Drake and Josh that Drake was basically like, I can't do this anymore. Mom, this is what's happened to me. And thank God the mom didn't act in denial, but actually acted on it, and they filed a police report and stuff like that. But we are the parents during this time. You understand what I'm saying? Like, from the little girl whose mother was allowing this grown man to email her little daughter until finally some picture came out of him, whatever. And from Drake's mom basically giving complete control of her son to a stranger until something happened. It's just like, are all the Hollywood parents complacent? Or do they really just think of their child as the money ticket and they don't care what happens? I'm starting to think that if you're far along in Hollywood, you probably have a parent who's neglectful, because the treatment that goes with these kids in Nickelodeon is disgusting, and I'm pretty sure it still happens. I'm pretty sure that it still happens today. And they even talk about how the parents who did say something, they were kind of like brushed off, or they were seen as annoying, or they were just treated really badly and ostracized. And it's just like, okay, so if we stick up for our child, then we're not going to go far. But if we just let things happen to them and throw them to the wolves, then that's when our stars can go, the kids can go really big. And that's just disgusting and sad. The fact that there were so many people when Drake was in court still on the side of Brian, even when they know what he did, is disgusting as well too. And there's a lot of people that we know that have supported him. At the end of the docuseries, they talked about how James Marsden or Marster or whatever his name is, James something, he's in Enchanted, was supporting Brian. And basically the whole cast of Boy Meets World is disgusting, and they were supporting Brian as well too. And they recently went on a podcast and was like, oh, the only reason why we supported Brian is because he turned it and made it seem like, oh, this boy, this hot young boy was like just kind of pursuing him relentlessly, and what could he do and things like that. Even if that was the case and it was Drake Bell the one who was pursuing him, it don't matter. He's still a kid at the end of the day, and you're an adult and you know better. You understand what I'm saying? It shouldn't be, oh, well, because the kid is pursuing him, Brian had no choice. That's disgusting. No, it's not like that at all. That is not okay. I just look at Boy Meets World as well too as so differently now, because why would you think that's okay? Like, him twisting the story like that is still wrong. Oh, it's because he still has power in the industry and you still want a job. So that's why you do it. So you corrupt your morals, you can get far in this industry still. That's what that was about. Another person who are a group of people who are also on my like disgusted list is Ned's Declassified. Because if you didn't know, they basically went on TikTok live and was joking about the whole, he was like, Daniel, come over here before I get in those holes, or something along those lines is what Ned said. Then they apologized for all of what they were saying. Didn't even say sorry. They said, oh, the reason why that happened is because we didn't watch the documentary. Of course, now looking back after watching the documentary, now I see how that's bad, which doesn't make sense to me. Even if you didn't watch the documentary, number one, you shouldn't be making jokes about people's holes and the grape word or anything like that. That's number one. Number two, they knew about what the documentary is about. Even if you haven't watched the documentary, you know that it's about abuse. You know that Drake Bell finally came out, because it was everywhere and they admitted it in the live, that it was about Drake Bell being sexually abused. So what is your excuse? What is literally your excuse? Even if you haven't watched the documentary, you know what the nature is about and you were still making jokes about it. That's disgusting. Wow. It's just wow. So they wonder, and that's the classify wonders why they don't get a reboot or didn't get a reboot. It's because of that. It's because you guys are weird. You guys are weird. Nickelodeon is to blame. I'm sorry. I love Nickelodeon. That is literally my childhood, but Nickelodeon is to blame because there was no oversight on Dan Snyder and what he was doing. The predators are to blame. I think even the parents are to blame as well too. I think that you need to stick up for your child, and whatever your child is doing is compromising morally, then you shouldn't do it. If you feel off about a situation as a parent, then I'm gonna take my child out of there and we're gonna find another way to make money then. It's just not worth it at the end. The trauma that these child stars have, it's not just Drake Bell, it's not just Amanda Bynes. All the trauma that these kids have was for what at the end of the day? For our entertainment? Well, now I can't even look at Nickelodeon the same. For you to have money in your pocket, do you still have money now? I hope that some legal action comes of this, because the fact that Brian Peck only got 16 months of prison and then got to work on the set of Sweet Life of Zack and Cody is disgusting. And it shows how much Hollywood really cares and invests in their child stars. They can make money for them. That's okay. But when it comes to actually the well-being of them, they don't give a and that is abundantly clear. It was not even, just to add a little bit more, Penelope Tate is just one example, but there's so many other clips of even people like Ariana Grande doing weird stuff. I personally never watched Victorious like that, but I've seen clips of like her online webisodes or whatever where Ariana Grande is like squeezing a potato, upside down, pouring water on herself, and I'm just like, whoa, what is this? Nasty. There was a compilation on TikTok that I saw of after the TV show was done. It shows like the Dan Snyder Bakery or whatever, and then it has like an outro of a clip or an audio clip of what these stars are doing, and one of the audio clips was like, it hurts, and then another audio clip of the outro was like, you can't touch my monkey fur. And it's just weird stuff that I'm just like, what is happening? And then we all know in shows like iCarly and other shows like that, there was like weird foot fetishes and things like that, and it's just like, how did this slip by so many people? You know, how did this continue to go on? It's nasty. So I need you guys to let me know down in the comments, is Nickelodeon tainted for you? Are you still going to watch and revere the TV shows and kind of just separate the writer from the actual product? Or can you not look at Nickelodeon the same like me? I don't know what to do. And I feel like this Nickelodeon is not the only one. There's probably other channels that had the same abuse with child and kid actors, and we don't even know the half of it. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure you subscribe, like, comment, tell me how you're feeling. I am here for you, and I'll see you in the next video. See ya.